Right. Welcome back to the fine print, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Caleb Teskey, and I'm back with Scot Waring from eLucidation for another chunk here. And first, I want to touch on the water quality stuff that you talked about. First, I wanted to ask you, a gentleman that I've been speaking with about labs was talking about these guys who do lab standards, ISO, something. Do you know about that? There's a number after it that I don't remember, but he said they're in charge of like lab like certifications or something.
So ISO is a standardization, international standardization organization, I think is what it stands for. But basically they are the holders of the best process for everything. So for instance, lab testing is 17025, ISO 17025.
That was the number.
And that basically has a number of different things that need to be documented. And it's basically about keeping records and documenting how things are done. And it also includes when you screw up and make a mistake, that has to be documented. And it's just basically keeping tons and tons of records about how you're processing samples, what you're doing with them, what you're doing with them afterwards, how you're handling other chemicals and machines in the lab, just all of these different things that labs aspire to do, and they have to document it to show that they're doing it. And so there are different certifying organizations that are not they're not directly connected to ISO, but they are trained professionals that come in and do audits of the standard, how labs are following that ISO standard in terms of just documenting everything, really. So it's about documenting and recording and things.
Yeah,
so
I was told there was like one group that basically checks lab like procedure and safety and shit like that, and then there's another organization that sort of checks your machinery.
Yeah, and it's like that for pretty much, engineering across the board. A lot of the sciences and stuff like that, they all have different ISO standards to follow. Like a machine shop will have its own ISO standards for safety and machine maintenance, and for making sure products are created in a very standardized manner.
So who tests the gear? Is that like the manufacturers? Do they have like a mobile gear testing unit or something?
Yeah. So I mean, for like balances, weighing in the lab or in the extraction area, getting it calibrated and serviced on a regular basis, and then having somebody who is ISO certified come in and do that sort of thing.
Now, what if labs are using different HPLC machines? I assume they got a few models.
No, that's a great point. And like I said before, it's kind of like a standardized machine. So you have, like a, how like a telescope works, but you can kind of create different types of telescopes that are more powerful or have different, see different wavelengths and whatnot. It's like that. So you have like your basic machines that just basically crank out tons and tons of injections, and this is the people who use those are like in generic drug companies. There's probably a lot of them.
I've seen the machines with the
yeah.
I assume that's to prevent cross contamination, right? So no one has to touch the samples, and also you can do it a lot faster.
Yeah. You want to make sure that the stuff is pure, and so they, like down in Philadelphia, New Jersey area, there's a lot of companies that just have stacks and stacks of these HPLCs where they inject just make all these injections and just collect loads of data for their drugs. But then you have research and development type HPLCs, like Waters is a company that specializes in like high-end HPLC and lab equipment. They have very unique, I think it's their pumps that are highly accurate. And so you're putting in small amounts of different things into an injection, then that's probably like an ideal R&D. There are like basic ones now, like Thermo and Agilent and some other companies are selling like what are being kind of sold as like a open it and like a turnkey situation for your cannabis lab, so a cannabis analyzer or whatever. And it's basically one of their HPLCs with software that creates reports. And it's fairly easy to, you know, if you have some good pipetting experience or wet lab experience or, you know, anything, it's fairly easy to set up a analytical testing capability for cannabinoids. And so I think a lot of the machines are like that right now.
Will you tell everybody, this is kind of a side point, but can you tell people sort of the overhead costs involved with starting one of these labs? Because I understand that it's through the roof.
Yeah, so it's not really a, it's not something like people who are opening labs are not going to make money really fast unless they've already been in this for a while and they're just extending their technological reach. They already have the machines and the people and all that stuff. But I mean, the amount investing in a testing lab is significant and the returns are not that high, especially when you start to have more competition in an area. So
what does one of those HPLC machines run?
You can probably you can get a good new one maybe for close to 30,000. Used ones probably are like half that. Right now you can find some somewhere in between there.
Oh, I was hearing more in the six-figure range.
Well, for a high-end one, but like just to get started, like
Okay.
a basic HPLC to start running tests. But you can, it's like cars, you can go high-end or you can, you know, go basic. So.
And like, is one of those machines enough to run a lab off of?
That depends on how many tests you're getting. Ideally, the more tests you do, the more money you make. So you want to have all the machines running all the time. And I think one machine is kind of, it's good for research and development purposes. But if you're going to be running a lab, and you know, anybody who's gotten their stuff tested knows that labs can like their machines go down or stuff like that.
How many samples how many samples can you run a day through one of those HPLC machines?
It depends on the method you're running and how many people you have and all that stuff. But theoretically, if you could prepare a whole bunch of samples and put them in there, maybe like 200 a day. And that's just the machine doing injections one after another. That doesn't include the preparation for the sample or the analysis afterwards, which are both, you know, important in getting the report out. Each report, you know, needs to be looked over and make sure everything makes sense and adds up. And, you know, because, you know, things happen in the machines. And that's one of the reasons that it's important, I think, to have trained people running the potency.
I took an atomic force microscopy class in college, and boy, you know, if you get a little piece of dust on the scanner head, when you're looking at something on a nanometer scale, you know, it fucking takes up the whole picture. So I mean, I certainly and to diagnose the problem could take you hours.
Yeah. Yeah. For days. Yeah, for sure.
Interesting. And you guys, labs have to have all this safety stuff, right? Like a safety, like a shower, eye wash stations, stuff like that.
Ideally, yeah. And I think that they're cracking down on that more now with the fire marshals and ISO certification. You definitely have to have eye wash stations and chemical shower.
What about the electric bill?
Yeah, it's pretty high. They generate quite a bit of heat. If you have multiple machines going for potency testing and also for terpenes, like you can use a gas chromatograph is another machine that we use in the lab, and that's be used to test for a lot of solvents and terpenes. And then it uses basically flame ionization, or not flame ionization, flame fire to basically burn the compounds and separate them.
What do they call that? A mass spectrometer?
Gas chromatograph, mass spectrometer. Yeah. GCMS.
Yeah. I know some nerd.
Yeah, you got it. You got it.
Okay, well, let's kind of pivot a little here, because you mentioned the water quality, and this is something I asked the board about, and I was just kind of curious, but about like input water, if there was any controls on input water, which it seems there is not. And I was just curious because before this I was reading about pollution around Vermont, a lot of contaminated sites, PFAS contamination. I've seen it in Montpelier, down in Bennington. There's multiple EPA Superfund sites directly next to each other. The military base, the Guard base in Burlington, I understand, is fairly well saturated with that stuff. And these are chemicals that they call them forever chemicals because they don't go away. And I actually looked up the state's testing labs. They have 40 accredited labs that are accredited to test for water quality. None of them are accredited to test for any of those types of that group of chemicals. And so anytime they want to test it, they got to pay an extra cost and send it to wherever, Massachusetts or wherever they send it. Do you have any thoughts on the water quality issues as it pertains to growing?
Yeah, I think as people are becoming more aware that cannabis is a very good bioaccumulator, and it picks up a lot of whatever's in the soil. It's used for bioremediation in some areas where it will be planted, used to help pull those metals and contaminants out of the soil, and then those plants are transported somewhere else and presumably put in like a containment facility, like it's some sort of contained facility or whatever, like another place to.
They just dump that shit. They dump that shit in Africa, don't they?
maybe there. Who knows who's taking it now?
I have heard of that, using it because it concentrates heavy metals really well, I understand. But then it's in the plant. So then what do you do with the plant once you get it out?
Right. So that's something definitely that, it's not something that a lot of people really think about when necessarily planting anything. But
I think about it, Scott.
Oh, I know you do. but traditionally, it's not. Anyway, yeah, I guess it's not really a problem unless it's a problem. But it's a little bit more of a situation here because I think one, cannabis is such a great bioaccumulator. It picks up things very well, better than a lot of other plants. But then also, if you're smoking it or ingesting it, and particularly smoking it, it's kind of concerning that there are such compounds in the material that you are consuming.
Sure. So, even like, I haven't looked at the state benchmarks for tap water recently, but I know there's certain things there, they have their actionable limits as well, and municipal water, or really just recycling the same shit and treating it over and over again. Although I see a lot of growers are using RO systems and things like that, but I was just curious because I haven't heard anyone talk about it. And I'm not a grower or anything, but I certainly water quality is, I think, going to be a big issue here in the very near future. And boy, it'd be a shame to think that some of those chemicals are going into the weed that we're smoking.
Yeah. Well, I think it's important to test it, and for everyone, not just the rec side, but the medical side as well. So get everybody aware of what's in there, and I mean, even for the growers themselves, they might not know these things, and so it'd be a great way to it's not a great way to find out, but it would be good to know, you know what I mean?
Well, I've
So
looked at some of the wastewater permits for a few factories around Vermont. One of them's up near my hometown. One of them, I looked at IBM a little bit, Global Foundries, some of these semiconductor, um, companies that, and some of those processes just generate a horrendous waste stream. And it seems like Vermont's kind of water quality thing is, as long as it doesn't turn the water purple or make it smell like farts, some of that shit can just be offloaded right into, EHV in St. Johnsbury or Weidman now. They have a effluent pipe that goes straight into the river. And I don't know where they get those their safe limits from. A lot of the chemicals they're using are covered by trade secrets, so we don't even really know what's going in there. So how do you test for something if you don't know what you're looking for?
it's a great question. I think it just has to be a process of elimination. You have to kind of go through and figure out what you can tell.
Well, I got you there a little bit, huh, Scott?
Yeah.
All right.
I mean, it would be a time-consuming and expensive undertaking, and like
Like a
who
needle in
does
a
that?
haystack, kind of, huh? If you don't know what
Yeah,
you're looking for, it seems like you
yeah,
might just have to test everything and hope to get lucky.
yeah. I mean, it'd be good to have a starting point, but if you don't have one, it's not really,
Hmm.
it's hard to figure out.
Yeah, it's wild because the state has guidance on that stuff too. PFAS can't be over this limit in drinking water, but they have no way to test it in the state or enforce if somebody, 'cause it's coming from everywhere. It leaches out of a landfill, all the textiles like carpets and clothing and, rain jackets and plastic, and
Yeah,
how
yeah,
do you
no,
stop that from just seeping downstream? Hmm.
yeah. It sounds like you have to take the soil out. Um,
And then what do you do with it?
right. And
Send
then
it
you
to
transport it
Africa
to
with the other
somewhere
stuff.
else. Exactly. Yeah. There you go.
Yeah, damn. All right. I wanted to ask you too about this sort of cross testing thing because there was some of that going. It seemed when the medical dispensaries first opened up that rather than having their products independently tested, they were just sending it between dispensaries and doing it like that, and that was independent testing. Um, the board has told me that now that's not going to be a lot. Well, I don't want to say that's what they said, but we had this conversation and I asked them about this and they said independent testing is going to be required, but they also said that these medical dispensaries can still do that and that counts as independent testing. So it seems kind of like we're sort of in the same exact spot here. Do you think that the medical dispensary should have to send it somewhere else? Or are you okay with them doing that?
I mean, I think that's kind of a clear conflict of interest, right? I mean, I don't know if that would be, I think, if they had some sort of trade association that got out ahead of the regulations, then probably like a lot of other places or other industries, but they haven't. And, I think the rules are becoming clear, and it's for everybody, the big guys, the little guys, everyone. You need to have this stuff tested so by a third party. And you know I'm sure they're doing a great job, and it adds value to their businesses just having the lab on site. But as far as in final tests and for selling and going to market, I think that should be definitely a third party independent laboratory.
And boy, it seems like, I don't want to criticize the business model, but I think 2 lab licenses have been approved, which means I guess the medical dispensaries probably already are setting up their own, I would assume, right? Series, and these guys who already have the medical dispensaries, I assume they're planning to set up labs.
I don't know what they're planning to do. I mean, they have their own in-house labs where they use for themselves anyway. And I guess they're allowed to do it, right? So maybe. I'm not sure. It would be competitive pricing.
And what'd you say for a full panel? Like $700, $800 or something?
What's a full panel?
I don't know. Why don't you tell me that?
Well, that
Everything
depends,
the state is requiring.
So that would be the potency testing, the residual solvents. Are they doing terpenes or no? The terpenes.
I don't know if terpenes was in there. Residual solvents definitely was in there.
Yeah, I don't think maybe they're not doing terpenes. Heavy metals, pesticides.
Salmonella.
Yeah, micro.
Yeah.
So that's 5 different technologies. So I mean, it would be a lot. I mean, like going close to $800,000, somewhere in there.
And how much? Oh, I guess we asked that earlier about how much I'd have to send you to get tested. Based on how much I grew. I'm going to ask the board about that because I'd like some clarification there.
Yeah, so like most labs just require like 2 to 3 grams if you're going to do potency testing, and that way they can get the moisture level of the bud and then do the potency, run the potency on the HPLC. That way you get the total dry weight, and that's all they require. But as far as like a sampling for the state, that might be a different method because they require a certain sampling method of your inventory. And like I said, for New Mexico, it was every 5 pounds. So like if you had 50 pounds of cannabis, then, obviously you need.
Don't make me do math.
10 tests, yes. So I don't think that's been defined in Vermont, and so I don't know.
I'm gonna get it defined.
Awesome.
Can you tell me the difference between water content and water movement? Do you know what that means?
I used to.
I've heard some growers talking about this, and I thought I'd ask you because I have no fucking idea.
I will have to get back to you on that because I'm not exactly sure how to distinguish those.
That's all right. Some of them just go unanswered. This was another one that stuck out to me. So when I was reading through these benchmarks here from the state guidance, so they have these benchmarks for, this is the heavy metals here. So they have actionable limits for trim flower, harvest lot and trim flower. Then they have actionable limits for concentrates, products, and infused products. Now the actionable limit, say for arsenic, the actionable limit for flower is 0.2 parts per million. For a concentrate for arsenic, it's 1.5. So it's about 7.5 times higher. Each of the heavy metals, actually, the actionable limit is higher for concentrates. Although, like cadmium, 2.5 times higher. Lead is twice as much. Mercury is 15 times higher. Do you have any idea why? I assume because it's a concentrate, so you have to allow a little more. But do you have any idea how they scale those things to say, oh, well, 7.5 times more arsenic is okay in a concentrate, but only, twice as much lead?
I have no idea how they did that. I I'm not sure. I do a little research on that, but I mean, it makes sense. Like as you say, things get more concentrated, and that would include the heavy metals and pesticides. But the scaling, I'm not really sure. Like if there's like sometimes they base it on food, sometimes they base it on other levels that the federal government has defined. I'm not sure exactly how that would have happened, but
Are you familiar at all with the what was it called? The Vale Lab, Vermont Agriculture and Environmental Labs.
in Randolph.
Kyle told me that is their reference lab. Do you know anything about what they do down there?
I think they do lots of different types of testing, but they pretty much, yeah, like whatever you want. I know they do cannabis now, but
Yeah, except for PFAS, they don't do that.
yeah, I think that might just be like a one of those things that you don't necessarily make money on. It's partly important, but the investment would be significant. So
Is it more expensive to test for stuff like that?
It could be. I would imagine so, since so few people are doing it, that there's just not a motivation, a financial motivation for it. Let me see if I can find something real quick.
I should have known that was the answer. There's no money in it.
Yeah, well, yes. Yeah, it looks like all the labs are elsewhere. Huh.
We got a few in Vermont, but a lot of the accredited labs are out of state.
Yeah. Well, that's like, it's one of the great things about Vermont, but it's also one of the challenges. It's just the population and population density, and there's a certain amount of you just have to have people to make money. I mean, it's not. That might be.
You gotta have money to make money, right? And there ain't a lot of money here.
That's true, and it's great, but it's also like a challenge for people who are trying to do business. If we want to have certain things here, you got to pay for them somehow, and there's not a lot of us, and
why
that's just the way it is.
Why couldn't the state set up some kind of testing lab?
Well, I think that's what Vale is, and I don't know why they don't do PFAS, but it might just be a financial issue.
Well, maybe they could use some of our tax money, that they're I don't know where all that goes, but
well, and there should be like some sort of federal money for that, because that's kind of under like other federal programs, right? The forever chemicals.
Yeah, and Vermont always seems to get the smallest chunk of the federal grant funding. It's like, but every time we get it's like us and like, I don't even know, Hawaii maybe. They get like nothing. Yeah. Huh.
Yeah.
Well, let's see. We got 10 minutes left here, Scott. Do you have any idea how they've selected these pesticides that they're going to test for, or if there's common pesticides that people use on weed plants?
Yeah. So I think They are for, it's the list they've built up is probably one that's been collected over time. I mean, it's been collected over time. I think a lot of experience from Western states has helped inform that. Like in Oregon, they had issues with mycobutanol, which is a fungicide that they used on plants. There's a lot of
It's on
powder.
the list.
Yeah, it's great for controlling fungi, but when you burn it, it combusts. One of the products is cyanide, so
Oh,
it's a health hazard, and
yeah, that's bad.
they found that out in Oregon, unfortunately.
Holy shit.
So that one is a big, that's a big red flag for people. But when you put these compounds, like all the, that's another challenge for the industry, is like all the pesticides, the synthetic pesticides, and even all the natural pesticides, they're all indicated for food crops, and they're not crops that you would smoke. And so the extra challenge with cannabis, in addition to the bioaccumulation, is also the fact that we smoke it. And so converting mycobutanol to cyanide is just, basically a joint away. And so we know what pesticides people are tending to use, because mycobutanol is very effective, but also ones that are causing health issues. So it's a combination of those things. So like you can use hydrogen peroxide, like a agricultural hydrogen peroxide, to take care of powdery mildew. It's
like Myox.
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't leave a synthetic chemical residue like mycobutanol does. It basically is like a contact fungicide, and then it turns into water and gases, oxygen.
So say I took a piece of moldy weed and I dipped it in the Myox. What happens? Or you spray it, whatever you do.
So when I was a kid, we had hydrogen peroxide in a bottle in our bathroom, and you put it on a cut and it would foam if it was really infected.
Yeah.
And so it's basically that. It's just kind of like ripping molecules off of microbes, fungi, and just tearing them apart chemically. So it kills them, basically.
But it doesn't harm the nuggets.
Not really. No.
Does it lower the THC content or anything, or
possibly?
Yeah. Okay. And then, but there's no health effect. It's like it evaporates.
Yeah, it's just water, oxygen. Yeah, it's pretty much it. It's it's a byproducts and the contamination and anything like that you need to be concerned about. But it's like the thing with butane. They haven't really had high quality butane until recently. You've been blasting with like shitty welding quality stuff that has other petroleum compounds in it, and so
I didn't know that. I'm learning something, Scott.
Yeah,
you got me on that one.
Vermont could safely do that. I know there's a ban on it, but it just takes specialized equipment and a supply of good, clean hydrocarbons. But
I hope we just focus on growing a better product.
It's totally like the thing.
That was interesting. Look, Scott, we got 5 minutes, and I've been asking everyone this. I don't know how closely you followed the legislation, but if you could change anything in there, what would you change? Is there anything you throw out or keep? Do you like any of the ideas? Do you think the 50 milligrams of edibles per package is fucking stupid?
Yeah, I think those the limits are pretty bad. Like the 60% on concentrates just doesn't make any sense. And it's basically you would have to adulterate concentrates in order to make them compliant.
Well, they've lifted the cap on liquid concentrates.
Oh, good.
But those are going to fall under the vape tax. So that's going to be taxed 90-something%, except that medical dispensaries, which I'm told are exempted from from the vape tax. So, but yeah,
I
for
mean,
hash, how do you water down hash?
um, yeah, cornstarch. I don't know.
And why would you want to?
Yeah, no, I don't think you do. But it gets back to the thing about the legislature, and they're maybe well intentioned, but not really informed about what that really means. It your body can only absorb so much THC when you take a dab. So it's kind of that's the kind of the limiting factor. It's not as much the concentration in the dab itself.
Let me ask you this. You said you have kids. How do you talk to your kids about cannabis? Have you talked to them?
Well, they're all pretty grown now, and it's pretty easy. None of them are interested in it.
Huh.
They would tell me if they were, because they know what I do and my lifestyle and stuff. But growing up, it was a challenge. Like when they were young, I didn't talk about it. I didn't really give them the words to talk about it, because at that point in time, the most dangerous thing about cannabis was getting caught, and I didn't want them to be talking about it at school or with their friends or with their friends' parents, and have that become a source of stress. And so I waited till they were a bit older, and then we just had frank conversations about it, and I was honest with them, and
Wow.
they would ask me questions, and just have that conversation. But at the same time, I would explain to them that it's not something that is necessarily good. It's not a something that's better because I do it versus when I don't do it. It's a choice, and I think over time they realize that that's not really for them, because I was just so present in their lives with smoking as they go older, and yeah, they don't like the smell. They don't like the
Oh, that's the best part.
right.
Maybe
But
they didn't want to do it because they saw you doing it and they were like, it must be fucking lame.
yeah, it could. I mean, probably. Yeah, I'm a pretty lame guy. Or it's
Look, you got any last thoughts here, Scott? I'm going to cut it after this one, but you got 90 seconds, man. If you got any last thoughts.
No, I think Vermont is going a lot slower than we want, and in terms of bringing it into a legal regulated market. At the same time, the gray market and black markets are both very competitive with the legal market, and it'll probably change over time. And I hope people are able to get tested products that have that are good quality, and that's really the goal. And I think we're on our way, but it is a little bit slow for some people.
Well, I hope we see you in a fucking lab one day, because you seem like the kind of guy we need. I'm going to cut it right here, but this has been fascinating, Scott. Thank you so much for joining me, and we're probably going to have to follow up on this down the road.
Sounds good.
All right. Peace, man. Thanks.
Thanks, Caleb. Take care.
Oh, beautiful.